show on UDTFF.
Again, here's Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your host, Jake Trowbridge and Dustin Lunt.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Apparently, I'm still drunk / hungover from 4th of July because I don't know how to time out the opening soundbite here, but that's okay.
If America wanted you to time it out, you would have timed it out. That's what I say.
There you go. Yes, but we'll get it back on track here. We've got a great show. My apologies to everyone that listened last week that I said we were done with our divisional breakdown series. I lied. I'm a big fat liar, and I will call myself out. We do have one division left here. For sure, this is the last division, and it is the AFC South. So we will be talking about them here in a little bit. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here late. A day later, we took the 4th of July off, figuring everyone else was celebrating. Why can't we celebrate as well?
And we did. We celebrated with a lot of beer pong, a lot of great food, a lot of great people, decent weather. You know, it all came together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to hang out and just relax. Actually, it was a really nice evening. So yeah, we had a lot of fun. Looking forward to doing that again, hopefully sometime soon. Because that was great.
You betcha. And then we're going to broadcast it, and then you're all going to have to watch us do it. How about that? Are you doing anything if it's not presented online? Is my point. I don't know if you are.
Well, I think it's fair. It's like the old saying: if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound?
If our greatest philosophers can't answer that question, there's no chance that this fucking guy sitting in this chair is going to get around to that. The best thing that I can answer is what I'm drinking. That's in my wheelhouse. I can do that. I feel comfortable with that. And I'm drinking tonight. I didn't have any yesterday because it felt a little too heavy. I needed to light things over the 4th. But I am with a black wheat ale this evening it's called a lightweight black wheat ale. It's from Three Sheeps Brewing. They do quality stuff out there in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So
sure do.
It also has a really fun can. It's got like an effervescence, a neon effervescence to it.
Oh. So how is that? A dark wheat?
It's great. It's everything that you think it would be based on the name. Does it taste like a wheat ale? You betcha. Does it taste a little bit darker than a typical wheat ale? Absolutely. It's right on the can. It's delightful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I am taking a break from beer this evening. I had a lot of it over this long weekend. So I'm just enjoying a cup of wine. Little Boda Cabernet Sauvignon.
Little cup of wine.
Class.
I wish you would have put it in a can. Not gotten canned wine, but just took an empty can and then poured wine into it. That you should have Frank Reynolds did.
Yeah. I know I should have, but missed opportunities. Maybe next time.
It's all right.
Maybe next time.
You got opportunities.
Yeah. All right, Jake. Should we get into our drunk trade? It looks like it's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Drunk, hammered, drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
Go back to Reddit, as we often do for these. This one comes from Reddit user JBZ93, who says, 3 friends and I at the bar, we each nominate the worst player on our rosters. Pick a card from a deck, and highest cards in order pick the players. The 4 players involved were Zonovan Knight, Isaiah Spiller, Dontrell Hilliard, and DeAndre Carter. I nominated Spiller, got second place, and picked Zonovan Knight. I just wanted to bring this idea to the table. I don't care about the trade. Nobody cares about the trade. Nobody cares about these players. Sorry. Maybe in really deep leagues, you've got some Isaiah Spiller love still out there, but I was floored by this concept, right? Everybody basically throws in their worst player, essentially, and then says, we'll do some swapsies just for fun. What do you think about this concept, Dustin?
It's interesting. It'd be more interesting if it was for better players. I don't know. It's like the end of your roster type guys that you're gonna cut anyway. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I love the concept, but as a whole, just as the worst player on your roster, it doesn't do much for me.
How would you, Dustin Lunt, improve this process to make it more exciting? It sounds like better players in the mix, but how do you police that?
I know that's the tough thing. And I don't have a good answer since I'm seeing this for the first time and you're dropping it right on me. I don't have a good answer.
You just know you don't want Zonovan Knight.
I don't want any of those players. It's just,
I think what is interesting is everybody's perception of their worst player.
right.
I think that there are some people, when you go to trade for players, and at least I've seen this in my league, people have wildly different values. I'll tell you one of my drunk trades. In fact, we could have made this a trifecta of drunk trades that I did this past Friday. I think I'll save that for next week's. But I went at it in one of my dynasty leagues, and I made several trades immediately, heavily influenced by alcohol. And I will tell you, the values that I had on my players, much different than the values some other people did. Meaning I was too low on some of my players, and then much higher on their players than they were. And so I think maybe if your bench is really deep, your rosters are really big, you're not going to see that necessarily. I think this is a really interesting idea for shorter bench leagues, though. If you don't have a ton of players, let's say you got your starting lineup plus 6 or 7, on the benches, I think that this is a pretty nifty idea. But to your point, in this particular one, it's just a fun way to kind of shoot the shit at the bar, I think.
It is. And, you asked, how do you, determine, what players are good or what players are better. And it's, how do you determine what's your worst player on your league? Again, it's all about relative value and what others think. Like you and I could have wildly different, Zonovan Knight, we could both have wildly different ideas and looking at each other's rosters and say, well, that's not your worst player. But I could, so it's
true. But in this scenario, there's no benefit to giving a player that is not your worst player. So it's easy to police at least this.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Whereas the opposite, I don't know if everybody has to put their quote unquote best player on the block and do something like that, then you get shenanigans in the mix.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love it as a concept. And it's something as, like you said, kind of as you're shooting the shit at the bar, like, yeah, it's something fun to do, but for me, doesn't float my boat.
Well, not every boat needs to be floated, Dustin. That's what they don't tell you about boats. Some boats.
That's the whole purpose of boats, is that they float.
No, you ever been to a museum? They got boats there sometimes. They're historical boats. They don't float at all anymore.
And they used to.
Yeah, but they don't currently in this state, in this day of this recording. So I technically win. Chalk that one down for a win.
All right, take it. Fine.
Intern, mark that down as a win for me.
We have an intern now? Sweet.
Yeah, you don't. I do.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, let's get into the AFC South here. Enough of this shenanigans. I'm sure there's going to be plenty here to discuss. So last one, for those of you, if you're just tuning in and joining us this offseason, first, thank you so much for doing that. But second, we'll break down each team here, going over notable losses and additions, fantasy relevant draft picks, and then just kind of chat about the team and what we're looking for here this upcoming fantasy season. So we'll start with the Colts because it is the first on the show sheet. So notable losses this year is Paris Campbell and Matt Ryan. They brought on board Gardner Minshew, Isaiah McKenzie, Brashad Perryman, and Pharaoh Brown. And in the draft, they took Anthony Richardson in the first, quarterback of the future. In the third, Josh Downs, wide receiver. And in the fifth, a pair of fantasy relevant players with Will Mallory at tight end and Evan Hull at running back. So, Jake, why don't you kick us off here and give me your thoughts here about this Colts team and some of these moves they've made this offseason and kind of what you're expecting, kind of broad overview of the Colts for this upcoming season.
It obviously starts with the quarterback. And when you look last year, the Colts were one of those teams who I think they thought were doing the right thing in bringing in a veteran who could
Mhm.
still get the ball to where it needed to be in Matt Ryan and give them a fighting chance. And it didn't work out at all for
Yeah.
Matt Ryan, to the point that he has just fizzled out of the league, even though he had a pretty hefty payday still coming his way. And so he
Mhm.
gets to sit at home on his couch and earn money the old fashioned way. So that's good. But they brought in, obviously, Anthony Richardson. And the fact that they brought in Gardner Minshew to back him up from the Eagles, I'm not a Gardner Minshew truther and saying like, oh, great, he's going to be the starter above Anthony Richardson for a bunch of games this year. But as a worst case scenario, having a guy like him there, I don't think that's
Mhm.
terrible, at least for fantasy and what he can do for the fantasy relevant guys around him. That's great. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how slowly Anthony Richardson gets worked in to the mix. And that's going to mean a lot. Redraft makes everybody a little bit scary for this year, outside of maybe one or two guys. In Dynasty, though, I think that this is a team where you can get a ton of future fantasy, maybe not superstars, but fantasy relevant dudes at a discount right now. In
Mhm.
your Michael Pittmans, even this Josh Downs taken in round 3, people very high on him coming into the draft. I think it's actually a great landing spot, and they've cleared some space in the depth chart. So it's a team that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about. You know, everybody loves Jonathan Taylor, obviously, but outside of that, it's just kind of dead air. So I'll throw it back to you here with Anthony Richardson, obviously the main guy that this all hinges on. Do you think he's an immediate starter? As in week 1, you can feel safe rolling him out.
I think that's how it's going to end up. It might be a little bit different if Matt Ryan was still there and they really had that true like veteran presence to kind of help guide him and kind of show him the way, maybe for the first few weeks of the season. Especially if Matt Ryan had showed anything last year. But considering that he's gone and they spent very high draft capital on Richardson, I think he will be the starter come week 1. Minshew, while I want to root for him and I would love to see him start, I think he is just going to be a career backup, which, hey, kudos to you for making that happen and having a very long and healthy career in the NFL. Not a bad place to be. But as I said, with that draft capital they spent, and they do have pieces there to help him succeed. They have a pretty solid defense, which I know isn't anything for fantasy, but it does help the quarterback. So yeah, I think he will be starting. Yes.
Yeah, I think he's the guy. For me, it's he'll start week 1 for the NFL. I don't know if he starts week 1 on my fantasy team. I don't
No,
think I'm that confident. So in
I
drafting him, it's going to be an interesting thing because his ADP right now is quarterback 14, meaning he's a presumably drafted guy even in one quarterback leagues a lot of the
yeah.
time. That's dicey.
I mean, I at quarterback 14, um, I if I was punting the quarterback position, and I would do say like a Kirk Cousins safe floor, and then maybe
Mhm.
take Richardson there, then a few rounds later to have that upside. And that if he does pop and he does show off, kind of like Justin Fields did last year, kind of that second half of the season really came on. Uh, yeah, then you have a guy that has that ceiling, but you're also hedging your bet it. Bleh.
Hedging your bitches. I
That's
know
right.
that's what you were going to say.
Yes.
I knew it.
Hedging your bets, having that safe floor with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I was just talking to Josh Hudson, friend of the podcast, by the way. No punt intended. Watch, subscribe, download that, by the by. But we had opposite perspectives on Anthony Richardson. Me saying, like, upside wise, I think he has a ton of it. And I think he's okay to draft if you go into it with the thought process after a couple of weeks, if he's not what I think he should be, I can drop him and move on to somebody who's safer, like a Jared Goff type or Kirk Cousins type, right? Off of waivers. Kirk won't be on waivers, but Jared Goff might. Whereas his perspective was the opposite, and I think he changed my opinion on it, was you're not going to want him the first 2 weeks because he is going to take time to grow into it, and he'll be more like Justin Fields, where at the end of the season, or Josh Allen in his rookie year, the end of the season, you might like what you get, and you can probably get him off waivers from the disappointed person who drops him after a couple of weeks. So Josh turned me into a mid-season Anthony Richardson guy.
Yeah.
What's your...
No, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. There you go, Josh. We're all in agreement with you, buddy. And then the other obvious kind of linchpin in this offense is Jonathan Taylor. Duh. He's still great, even though people got bummed a little bit.
He had a down season last year, air quotes there. Like, come on. He was still, considering what a shit show that team was last year, he did okay for himself.
I think he did very well, but yeah, I mean, you're always going to be bummed when they don't perform to ADP exactly.
Especially when you're drafting him as the first running back off the board, that most people were drafting him last year as
in a lot of cases too, the first player off the board. Like he was it. He was the 101. So this year, he's not the 101. That's not what his ADP is. But how many running backs will you draft over him?
Let's see. Just looking at I'm looking at Fantasy Pros just for reference here of their current 2023 ADP, and they've got him 6th. So here's the players I would take: McCaffrey, Eckler, Bijan, Barkley, probably.
I think
so. He'd be like top shorter. 5.
Yeah. He'd be your 5. So you'd put him a little bit above ADP. Like you wouldn't take Nick Chubb above him.
No.
Okay.
I just couldn't in a PPR league, and I know there's some growing positivity around Nick Chubb and the fact that they don't really have anyone else in that backfield right now. So he could be in line for an uptick in receiving work out of the backfield, but I just don't buy that. I just
Jerome
don't.
Ford season, baby. He's
there
gonna be the Kareem Hunt guy. First of all, Chubbs are always positively growing in the offseason. I just want to put that out there. I would only take CMC and Eckler above Jonathan Taylor. Bijan, I fought back and forth with him and Bijan, and that's the predicament that I'd fall into. And I feel like Jonathan Taylor is safer.
Yeah, I mean, Bijan, Taylor, Barkley, I think those 3 all fall into same tier of running backs, where I think, McCaffrey and Eckler are a tier above them. So that would be like a second tier of running backs. So in my mind, they're all very similar. So I would take whichever one fell to me in the draft, basically, at that point.
They're all in a clump. They're all in a Michael clump. Scampers in the chat, by the way. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening
Scampers.
To you, Scampers.
Thanks for joining.
Welcome to this funtivities of the AFC South. But then it gets weird with the Colts. Outside of that, it just gets so weird. So we've got a bunch of wide receivers that I was saying for Dynasty, I would love to grab them now. Do you care about grabbing any of these guys now and redraft? Then what's your thought process here?
I think for this year, for redraft, give me Pittman of all the wide receivers. Just give me Pittman for this year for redraft. We know what he is. For Dynasty, still give me Pittman. I do like that Josh Downs take you had earlier. I think he'd be a good one to try to snag and stash on your roster. Give him a couple years, and hopefully he develops into a solid fantasy contributor for you.
I like that. Yeah, the long-term guy I think is easy there in that. And they got some other interesting fellas on that team. Like if you like Alec Pierce, he had a lot of sizzle coming in last year. It didn't pay out. But because nobody on this team really paid out, Michael Pittman was fine. And that's as much as you could even say about him. he's probably destined to be like a DJ Moore type of dude, like a
Yeah,
competent wide receiver 2.
I say solid wide receiver 2.
Mm-hmm.
And you need those on your roster. You need those. Like you can't have all wide receiver 1s.
You can try.
Well, you sure can, but
it's going to be difficult.
Mhm.
Scampers, by the way, loved the end of roster lottery idea from the drunk trade. Had this idea for how to improve it. Maybe stack bottom 3 players in the lottery. So if you put your bottom 3
expanding
into
the pool a little bit.
Exactly. And then everybody gets their top of the churn there. I like that.
I like that. I like that a little bit more, Scampers. Good call.
Saving the day.
Mm-hmm.
Save the day. Do you care about tight ends on the Colts? Do you care about a single tight end?
I don't. I really don't.
I want to.
We all want to, but no, it's just not going to be a thing.
We've all been missing Jack Doyle.
We have.
And we didn't know that we were missing Jack Doyle, I don't think. But we are.
Mm-hmm.
I am. I wanted Mo Alley Cox to be a thing so bad the last like 2.5 seasons.
It's just not going to happen. No.
Jelani Woods, I like for best ball. He's an interesting guy. All of those guys are basically like dart throws and best ball. Because, maybe they'll catch a couple of touchdowns that week just because this offense could be great. But also, it terrifies me just to put them into my weekly lineup.
Yeah, that'd be about it. I agree. Best ball is probably your best option if you want to take a chance on any of these guys. Maybe in Dynasty, if you want to throw, maybe you could get them for like a third. Some of these guys and just stash them to see if something happens over the next couple seasons. But I'm not anticipating it. I think some of these guys, if they would have popped, they would have by now, basically.
That's fair. That's what the Colts team is in a nutshell.
That's right. Okay, let's move on here. Unless there's something else you want to say about the Colts here, Jake?
No, I think I've burned myself out on the Colts already. But hey, Brashad Perryman somehow got added to the roster. I don't know if that even got a blurb on the internet in total.
Yeah,
that's what
probably not.
It's okay.
All right, let's move on to the Texans. Notable losses: Brandon Cooks, Jordan Ekins, OJ Howard, and Philip Dorsett. They brought on board Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz, Mike Boone, Devin Singletary, Noah Brown, Steven Sims. And in the draft, they took CJ Stroud, a quarterback in the first. And in the third, they took Tank Dell, wide receiver. And in the sixth, Xavier Hutchinson, another wide receiver. I will kick us off here with the Texans, Jake, if you don't mind.
Please do.
All right. So the Texans, from a redraft perspective, there's really only one guy you should really be focusing on, and that's Dameon Pierce, running back. I think he's the safest fantasy asset for this season, at least. So for redraft, you're not looking at anything special from this team. Take some flyers on some of the late guys. Maybe Robert Woods has something left in the tank. Maybe Dalton Schultz, if you're kind of punting the tight end a little bit. And want a guy that has produced previously. Maybe there's going to be some magic there. But outside of like those three guys, not much there. Dynasty, however, I think the arrow's starting to point up a little bit, and I do like what the Texans have been doing overall as far as building this roster. Stroud, I think, is going to be, I shouldn't say great, he's going to be a very solid quarterback in the league. You've got some young guys with Nico Collins and John Mechie, and they drafted someone else last year, I believe. But then with Tank Dell coming on board and Xavier Hutchinson, you've got Robert Woods there to teach those guys how to play the position well. He is never a speedster. He's more of a technician as far as running routes and everything. So you've got that veteran presence in that wide receiver room, which I can really think will help them grow. Dameon Pierce, they brought in, I already forgot, Mike Boone, Devin Singletary. These guys don't, matter a whole lot. Maybe Devin Singletary will take some carries away, but probably not a whole lot more of just a spelling of them. Excuse me. So
Got the burpees?
A little bit.
Got the little burps babies?
A little bit. So yeah, Dameon Pierce, he's safe for this year, especially since they really didn't draft anyone. So wheels up for him. But the rest of this team, it's just kind of a lot of question marks at this point. But like I said, for Dynasty, some guys to take flyers on that may end up being something, maybe. But for redraft, like I said, it's Dameon Pierce and then maybe Dalton Schultz. And that's probably about it.
And I don't even feel that good about Dameon Pierce, if I'm being honest, for a redraft.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even really want to, because he had nobody for competition last year. And he was fine. He was okay, especially the first part of the season.
Right.
And but even before his injury in the last few weeks, he kind of started to fall off. And when you start ceding a little too much work to Rex Burkhead at 38 years old or whatever the fuck he was, then I have questions, because I think Devin Singletary is pretty good as a running back. I think he's better than the junk they had behind him.
Well, that's fair.
Dameon Pierce last year. So I'm not even really committed to Dameon Pierce. He'll probably be like a dead zone running back that I'll just pass on.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be like him and all the Bears running backs where I just don't want it, or the Dolphins running backs, like that whole crew.
Mm-hmm.
This team I'm not interested in for 2023 is what I'm saying. But to your point, beyond that, for Dynasty, I love me some John Mechie. I'm excited for him. I'm excited for Stroud. I'm excited for this team to not look like garbage, hopefully, for once.
Yeah.
It's been a bit.
It has.
But yeah, I don't know. Brandon Cooks, they're going to miss you, I still think. I don't think Robert Woods is going to fill those shoes, and that's why I'm not drafting Robert Woods this year, as much as it pains me to say it. God damn it. So
Dalton Schultz is currently going at wide receiver, tight end 12. How do you like that?
I don't like that. I don't like Dalton Schultz either. I'm telling you,
you don't think he can be a top 12 tight end 1 on your roster? He's not someone that, if you're punting the position, figuring that they don't have a lot of receiving weapons. And like I said, he's a guy that we've seen it being done with him before, where he's produced at a fairly high level. You wouldn't want to, like I said, if you're punting the position, you wouldn't want to take a chance on him and maybe another guy that has, maybe a higher upside to him, and Dalton Schultz could be your safe floor guy.
I don't, because can he finish as a top 12 tight end? Yes, he can. And you're drafting him as tight end 12. That's fine. There are a lot of guys who could finish as a top 12 tight end that are going way after Dalton Schultz. And I think a lot of those guys have more upside than Dalton Schultz has. I think Dalton Schultz was a trick. I think his season last year was a trick. We've seen a lot of 1-2 year tight end flashes that just go away, just almost immediately. And I think he's one of those guys. He's not like Greg Olsen or some shit. Well, that's a high comp. But, he's not like a steady guy like that. I think we just kind of got tricked into him. And I don't want it. I don't want the Texans roster on my fantasy roster in 2023.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand where you're coming from, but like I said, if I was punting that position and really just waiting, I think he's going to give you a safe enough week-to-week floor that he'll be worth it in the end. I mean, is it ever going to win you week? Probably not, no. But at the same time, I think he's not going to skunk you either.
Maybe. But did Jordan Akins do anything last year? Did OJ Howard do anything? I didn't even realize OJ Howard was on the team until I put that in the show sheet, by the way. I had no fucking clue.
Yeah,
OJ
but neither
Howard
of those
was
guys have been like really great tight ends. And I'm not saying that Dalton Schultz is a great tight end, But like I said, we've seen him perform at a fairly high level. So
let's beer bet it. Let's do this. This is the
all right.
perfect opportunity
It
for a
really
beer bet.
is. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's put the cutoff. Jeez. I'd say I want to say tight end 10, but that seems too high for you. It's perfect for me because I don't think there's a chance in hell. Well, there's a chance, but you're not going to feel great about it. So I would say tight end 10 feels right then as the cutoff.
Tight
In
end
points per game.
Right.
And obviously, minimum games played, all that shit comes into factor. But I think there's a greater chance that he finishes outside of the top 20 tight ends than he does finishes as a top 8 tight end. Let me put it that way.
Well, top 8 is pushing it, I think. But top 10, I'll take the top 10.
Top 10? Okay.
Yeah.
Done.
Why not? It's just shots.
Also, we have to do something to liven up this fucking team because it's just
true.
a disaster show with the fucking Texans here coming in. Why did we leave them until last, Dustin?
Here's why. I'll tell you why I'll take him at 10. Just looking at a few of the guys right now that are going ahead of him. You've got David Njoku, which I'm not a huge believer in. Pat Freiermuth, I want to believe in, but a lot of questions there. You got Chig, who has a lot of steam right now, but on an equally bad Tennessee Titans team, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. And then you come to Dalton Schultz at 12. So there's some room there above him to make that happen. I do think 10 could be a tough road for him, but like I said, there's just not much on this team to like and to throw to. So the balls have to go somewhere. They're not going to be running the ball, 60 plays a game. So why not him?
Why not him is as good of an endorsement for a tight end outside of the top 5 as you're going to
There you go. Yeah.
Legitimately. So, hey, I get the sentiment. I don't want him. I'd rather have Tyler Higbee. I'd rather have Gerald Everett. I think him and Cole Kmet are basically the same guy.
Are we gonna put a number of games on this? Just
we say minimum 6. I think is our typical
6. Okay.
Is that, or we can do 8. We can do a half a season if you're more comfortable with that.
Fine.
Yeah,
either one's
let's do
fine.
8. We'll do minimum 8.
Yeah. Just
Done.
less chance to have this nulled at the end of the season.
That's true. All right. Can we stop talking about the Texans, please? Can we move on?
Yes, we can. All right, let's move on. Let's get the other gross one out of the way. We'll talk the Titans, and then we'll save the best team in the South for last. How about that?
This is why we waited to put them last.
That's right.
Is because
That's
it's our
right.
second homer team.
That's right. So yeah, we'll talk Titans here next. So they lost Robert Woods and Austin Hooper. No notable fantasy additions to speak of. And in the draft, they took in the second Will Levis at quarterback. In the third, Tajay Spears at running back. In the fifth, Joshie Wiley at tight end. And in the seventh, Colton Dowell, wide receiver. So, Jake, why don't you wax poetically about this Titans team here?
Well, first of all, I wrote Joshie Wiley. His name is Josh Wiley, but henceforth he will be called Joshie Wiley.
I'm just reading the show sheet. You have to know I'm like Ron Burgundy here. You need to put it on the prompter, and I'm going to read exactly what's there.
I'm going to throw so many question marks into the next show sheet. But with this team, this is a team. The Titans are a lot like the Rams to me. They're very, very similar because I don't know what they're doing. Are they rebuilding? I guess not. Are they contending? Just no fucking chance in my view. So they're somewhere stuck in the middle here, and they've got a lot of veteran pieces, and they've got a lot of young dudes, and they have to figure out their identity soon, like today, because the group that they lost, I thought was going to be much higher when the offseason started. I thought we were going to be talking Ryan Tannehill getting moved, Derrick Henry getting moved. Instead, it was just Robert Woods and Austin Hooper out the door. Austin Hooper. That's a great comp for Dalton Schultz, by the way. That's who I was trying to think of. That's who he is. In that he's not great. But anyways, with this team, there's still the linchpins, Derrick Henry, and then there's a hopefully linchpin in Treylon Burks, who he's A.J. Brown, which is what they wanted him to be when they booted A.J. Brown and drafted Treylon Burks a year ago. That hasn't happened. And so I don't know what this team is supposed to be. I just know that there's only two guys that I really want out of this team in redraft, and it's Derrick Henry and it's Treylon Burks because their ADPs are so good enough. I'm cool with it. But outside of those two, I don't fucking know what's going on here. I have no clue what's going on. I don't know what's happening at quarterback. Is Ryan Tannehill still going to get moved before the start of the season somehow? Like, do you think he starts week 1?
It wouldn't surprise me if he got moved, if there's an injury to a team that wants, a solid veteran, I guess. I could see him getting moved in at that point, but barring that, I don't see him. He'll be with the team. Will he start then? Most likely. I think Will Levis, he needs some time to sit on the bench and learn a little bit. Just from what I've heard other people say, I by no means tout myself as a rookie expert, but from what some smarter people than myself that I've listened to, I think he would probably benefit from a year on the bench. So I would expect Tannehill to play and start the season if he's still on the roster.
What do you think if Jimmy Garoppolo and his injury and he's not ready for the Raiders, would the Raiders be the team to trade for Tannehill? Because that makes a lot of sense to me.
I think it could be. Sure.
Keep a pin in that. Let's be ready to clip this out in case I'm right so I can celebrate the fucking shit out of it. But I do think Ryan Tannehill, if he stays on this team, it's good for Treylon Burks' consistency. I'll give him that. That's what he does for this team for fantasy. But I'm not going to be tempted into even taking him as my second quarterback, I don't think. I understand the value because he's a name-ish who was successful within the last couple of years in fantasy. And you see him going at like quarterback 30 and your brain just goes, well, I don't know, that seems like a value to me. And I don't think it is. Because I think you're going to be really, really disappointed. So then my question is just Derrick Henry. Is Derrick Henry, does he have another year of elite fantasy production, or is this the beginning of the end for him?
Yes. I am not going to bet against Derrick Henry until he literally retires or we see him fall off the cliff. So there's no reason to think that he's going to slow down this year. We didn't see it last year. He was still a stud. So yeah, until I see it, I will gladly draft him. What is he like? Running back like 7, or he's like 8 or 9 right now. I think in ADP.
8. Yeah.
So yeah, I would take him there if he fell to me and he's going to be my first running back off the board, kind of in like that mid-second. Sure, sign me up all day long.
Yeah, Derrick Henry once again led the league in rushing attempts. This is 3 out of the last 4 years. The only reason he didn't in 2021 is because he only played half the season. And even then, he was on pace for 440 some attempts, I guess it was. Fucking crazy shit. What other running back are you going to find in the league that even has a chance at that volume? I don't think that they exist. So yeah, nope. I'll take the shot. I've been wrong about older quote unquote players falling off so many times that I'm done being that guy. I'm riding them until the wheels fall off. So I do love Derrick Henry. I think he's actually a value, I guess you would say. Would you take him over Nick Chubb?
It'd be close. Probably. With Nick Chubb in that offense, I'm just not 100% convinced. Well, I just don't know what that offense is going to look like for
Mhm.
Cleveland. I'm assuming they're going to be more pass heavy than run heavy, where I think Tennessee is still going to focus on Derrick Henry. So I'll probably take Henry over Chubb.
Yeah, and especially with ADP baked into it, where you're getting like an extra half round at minimum,
Mm-hmm.
where I can grab a, elite wide receiver where Nick Chubb is going if I'm in that spot. Hope Derrick Henry maybe circles back. I would love that. Scampers in the chat, very good point. Derrick Henry, Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp. I'll let other people do the doubting. Yeah,
Yep.
all those guys fall into this bucket of
Mm-hmm.
elites until proven otherwise.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Treylon Burks is a weird one, though. His ADP is completely fine. Like, I'm not scared off of him because his ADP, because he is going, and I'll tell you the gentleman that he's going around. Do you want to do a little him or him, this or that? Who'd
Yeah.
you rather?
Let's do it.
With Treylon Burks, I think he's a great case for this. Assume your roster is great up until this point. You don't have any question marks, no holes.
Okay.
It's not a roster dependent thing. It's just these guys. Tyler Lockett or Treylon Burks?
Or we're talking redraft?
Redraft. Yep.
Oh, God, that's tough right out of the gate. I'd probably lean fuck. That's a tough one.
I didn't mean to melt your brain this early. I got
here's the deal.
Names left here.
Well, here's the deal. I want to lean towards Burks because he's really the only wide receiver in that group.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that they're a lower volume passing offense, where Seattle's going to be a higher volume passing offense, but there's more weapons to go around and spread the ball to. But I guess give me Burks.
I think Tyler Lockett is going to be my one here. Again, I was just talking before this podcast. I think Tyler Lockett is almost in that category of the Derrick Henry, Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp kind of guy. Like, I know they added a rookie. And by the way, Lockett and the rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba are going back to back in ADP. I'm going to gloss over him for the time being because I'm guessing your answer would be the same. So Mike Evans or Treylon Burks?
For this year, give me Evans.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I like Evans. I think that's crazy value. And then I'll just do two more here real quick. Jahan Dotson or Treylon Burks?
That's
Dotson
close.
the 2 in Washington.
Yeah, that's close. Again, probably Burks because we know he's the 1. Although I do like Dotson. I think he flashed at times, and I do really like him. But yeah, give me Burks.
Yeah, I think Jahan Dotson would score more touchdowns than Burks this season, but I don't think everything else makes up for it.
Right.
So I would still go with Burks. And then lastly here, Kadarius Toney, the
Burks.
Possible maybe. Okay.
Just give me Burks. Yeah, that one was easy.
Right. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
I like that. And then Chigakonkwo, I guess, look, we were talking about tight ends and Dalton Schultz. Chigakonkwo, everybody loves because there's nobody else on the team, much like you were saying with Schultz. So are they in the same exact bucket to you? Do you have a preference?
No, I don't have a preference. I mean, I like what we saw out of him last year. It gives you good promise for upcoming here, but he might be getting pushed up the boards a little too rich for my liking. Again, just with this lower volume passing offense, it just gives me some pause. Let's put it that way. But I do like him as a player, and I think for Dynasty, he's definitely someone. If you can grab him, you should try to get him, because I really do like him.
See, I think Chigakonkwo is a this year guy. I think in Dynasty, I'm going to stay. Well, I mean, you can trade for anybody in Dynasty for a year if you understand that that's like that. But that's what I'd be trading for him as is a this year guy. Because I also think there's nobody else to throw to. I prefer him to Dalton Schultz for what it's worth. Which, if anybody knows tight ends, baby,
it's
this guy. But I would take Chigakonkwo because I feel more comfortable him staying in the same offense. And he was great last year. Although Tennessee does just piss people off in rotating tight end sometimes.
This is very true.
The Titans tight ends are not Titan level fantasy producers or some shit. Can we talk about the other team now?
All right, I suppose we can move on here to the Jaguars, last team of our divisional breakdown series.
That's what we wanted.
That's right. Our like as you said, our de facto other homer team here. We are all team Jaguars here on this podcast. So notable losses: Marvin Jones and Dan Arnold. Notable additions: Calvin Ridley, suspended last year, coming back, and Dearness Johnson. And in the draft, in the second, Bretton Strange, tight end. In the third, Tanks Bigsby as a running back. And in the sixth, Parker Washington, wide receiver. Lots to like about this Jaguars team. You got Trevor Lawrence, who came on in the second half of the season last year, looked much better than his rookie season, which is what you want to see. But we all know that his rookie season was just a dumpster fire for all players on that roster. So we would have hoped to see some steps forward, which we did. I'm expecting another step forward this year, even more so. Calvin Ridley coming back from his suspension, still on his rookie contract, if you can believe it or not. But it'll be interesting. That's probably the biggest question mark I have is he going to come back in football shape? How is he going to integrate into this offense, being out of football for over a year at this point? They still got Zay Jones. You still got Christian Kirk, who both played well last year. Evan Ingram staying on that 1-year deal or the franchise tag. I think he's a really safe bet for this year to be top 10 tight end like he was last year. They did draft Bretton Strange, so that kind of gives them the out after this year and allow him to learn a little bit. But yeah, a lot of great fantasy pieces. I know I didn't talk about the running backs at all with ETN, Tank Bigsby, but just a lot of great fantasy upside with this roster, which is really nice to say after years of it just kind of being a black hole for fantasy and in the NFL in general. So it warms my heart to say these things.
Something for Texans fans to maybe look forward to.
That's right.
The track you want your team to be on.
That's right.
I think this team is my favorite before we get into the nuts and bolts of it. I think that they're my second favorite team because you saw the immediate rise of you guys got dragged down by your bullshit coach in 2021 so hard. It was so easy to root for them. And when they live up to the potential, it also warms your heart. So I think that's why I'm an honorary Jags fan.
Mm-hmm. Same. So, Jake, how do you feel about Calvin Ridley and him coming back from suspension this year? Looks like on the show sheet here, he's going at wide receiver 16. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's too high? Because I honestly have a hard time getting a good read on him and how I personally feel about him. So hit me. Convince me one way or the other.
Oh, all right. I'll convince you. I'll convince you real good. Here's my little pitch for Calvin Ridley. Here's what you want for a guy that's turning 29 before the end of this season, who has only played 4 seasons. And actually, nope, sorry, 3.5 seasons. As a guy at 29 years old, what you need is recent or semi-recent history of proven fantasy production. Can he be, if you're drafting him that early, can he get into the top 12? Because that's what you need at that range. He did it once in 2020. He was the wide receiver 5. That's it. Any other iteration of this, he's been wide receiver 2 or worse. Again, he only played 5 games in 2021, so you can't hold that against him, but he was not on track to be a top 10 guy. So like you said, taking a year off, coming into an offense that I already really like Christian Kirk in. And Christian Kirk last season was wide receiver 11 at the end of the season. He's not a scrub That dude ain't a scrub, so he has actual competition. And at that ADP, I'm not that heavily invested in Calvin Ridley. He's a guy who would have to fall a few more spots for me to even, I think, consider it. So I'm out, I guess, unless his ADP makes a big dramatic shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm feeling the same way. And I feel like, I mean, you've already seen, I don't know if you saw it, Jake, but on Twitter, there's already blurbs from uh, coaches and players saying how he's unstoppable and
Oh
he's,
boy.
in best shape ever, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, I feel like his ADP, a month from now is going to be hovering probably close to that wide receiver 13. He's going to move up a few spots and probably be pushing wide receiver 1 territory. And yeah, that's just way too rich for me for a guy that we haven't seen play football in a year.
It's about the talent, but like, dude, you want a guy who's been away for this long to have a whole bunch of seasons where he's been like a
Right.
semi-elite guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what scares me. He's always been very good, but he hasn't quite put it together 100%. And that's what scares me. And I would rather take Christian Kirk at his ADP rather than Ridley. And they have that year of building chemistry already. So yeah, just I'd much rather take that.
Yeah. And maybe neither of these guys is elite for fantasy because they cut into each other's production. Maybe because there's something to be offered here that Zay Jones, God love him, did not offer last year. But Zay Jones himself was actually pretty decent in spurts. Like you could have plugged him into a best ball lineup, certainly, and he would have been great for you. So
Absolutely.
2 receivers could thrive in this offense, even with Evan Ingram, which we have to talk about. Because my goodness, what a re-enlivening of his fantasy production occurred last season. But I would definitely go with Christian Kirk to your point here and feel more comfortable.
Yeah. Now, how are you feeling about Trevor Lawrence? Is he a guy that I mean, okay, he's not an elite quarterback and he doesn't have that rushing upside. He does have that scoot to him. He's got a little bit of scoot.
He's got scoot.
He can do a little bit of rushing, but that's not his game. I feel like he's more of like Aaron Rodgers in his prime, where he could take off and run and would if the defense gives it to him. But he's not looking to run, unlike Josh Allen or Fields or Hurts, where they'll take off right away and have no issues with that. So does that drop him down a little bit for you as far as rankings go for these quarterbacks, or where do you have him in the span of the top 12 QBs?
Well, I think he is perfectly suited for his current ADP of QB 8. That's where he is as of right now. I think that is perfect for him because once you get past the, again, quote unquote, elite quarterbacks where you've seen it from. So your top guys, obviously Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, in whatever order you prefer. And then there's a tier gap. And then there's some other guys that you can throw into the mix, and I won't begrudge you for it. But he fits into that tier. Maybe Justin Fields is a half tier above him because of his rushing ability. But Trevor Lawrence, I think he's more of a Russell Wilson type of rushing quarterback than an Aaron Rodgers one. Like,
Okay.
I think he'll pick up more. We saw it a little bit more in college, at least. But now that he has this extra weapon in the offense, will he need to as much?
Right.
Maybe not. But I think that it's pretty hard to find somebody that I'm more excited about at their ADP at quarterback. Because if he's there and I'm sitting there at quarterback 8 and he's on the board, I have zero issues taking him.
Yeah, same. I think he's ADP is perfect. I really don't have much more to add. I'll just kind of start repeating everything you said, but yeah,
But do it louder.
I'm in 100% agreement with you on him. Now let's quickly hit here the last fantasy relevant position of this team, since we've kind of hit the rest of them, and that's the running back room. How are you feeling about ETN? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I am avoiding him at ADP right now. I think it's a trap, and I don't like it.
You're not a big fan of traps, is what I'm learning today.
No.
Interesting.
Did you ever see Star Wars?
Conspicuous. No, do you mean Star Trek
Wars.
or Battlestar Galactica? What are you
No.
trying to say? I don't think Star Wars is a thing. I'd love to give you shit. I've never seen a full Star Wars movie. I need to put that out into the listenerverse. That's why I'm being such an asshole about it right now. But I do think with Travis Etienne, I get where you're coming from with him being a trap. So if I look right now in full PPR, Travis Etienne is going around some guys that I have a lot more confidence in. So he's RB14. So he's sandwiched in between Jahmyr Gibbs, rookie for the Detroit Lions, and Joe Mixon for the Bengals. Weirdly, this is a scenario I would take Joe Mixon. Holy fuck, I said that on a podcast. I would take Joe Mixon above this guy as long as, he's not suspended and they don't have whatever other shit. Because Tag Bigsby scares me. His name is Tank. They drafted him in the 3rd round. And Travis Etienne doesn't get enough pass catching work to save him from that. So if Tank Bigsby takes any of the pass catching work, which I've heard on the streets is likely or somewhat likely to happen, Travis Etienne becomes a bare bones RB2, and not a whole lot of upside. I guess, do you think this offense scores enough that he's relevant either way, where he just gets enough touchdowns to be relevant?
I don't know. And that's the problem. I just, like I said,
this offense.
I love the offense. They
should score a lot.
They should score a lot. I don't know if he's going to get used in the red zone with all the other weapons that they have. And like you said, with Tank and Dearness Johnson, they brought on board, who we've seen him flash, and it is limited opportunities. So, I mean, maybe those guys end up getting it and he's more of the pass catching back. Since he's not like a big guy, I don't know. All I know is at running back 14, that scares the hell out of me. Honestly, Aaron Jones is going 18th running back overall. Give me Aaron Jones all day over ETN for redraft this year. Like,
battle of the Homer running backs. I love it.
For real. It's just, I mean, depending on where Dalvin Cook goes, I would take Dalvin Cook over it. And maybe that's part of Dalvin Cook's ADP, is that it's kind of baked in where we don't know where he is right now. So that I could see increasing. But
if Dalvin Cook signs with Miami, would you rather take Dalvin Cook over Travis Etienne?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. So there's other guys I think have better opportunity, or I think are a little bit safer for as far as what their opportunity is going to be. But I mean, I do like ETN. He's very electric. We saw it last year where he had those games where he'd rip off a 50-yard run or a catch, and run, and very electric. But I just, with all the other pieces and just the other running backs there, I just can't get on board with it this year.
Yeah. Aaron Jones, running back 16, J.K. Dobbins, running back 19, Miles Sanders, RB20, Cam Akers, RB21. Like, all of these guys, I think I'd be more interested in waiting to draft as opposed to kind of maybe shitting the bed with Travis Etienne, which sucks because I love this guy. I was big in on him last year. I want to be more on him than I am, but I can't.
Yeah, same. I want to as well, but I can't do it.
We're trying, Travis. Do something to prove us wrong. Get us back into your good graces this year.
So, any last thoughts here about the Jags before we sign off here, Jake?
No, go Jags.
Go Jags.
Duval or whatever they say. We got to learn all the, all the slang.
Duval.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
That.
Well, before we sign off here, want to let everyone know that we will be on the SFB Podathon this coming, I guess you could say, Sunday, the 9th, 1 a.m. Eastern time. We've got a late night slot, but would love for you guys to join us and tune in. Just tune into the Podathon in general. It's a great time. lots of great fantasy analysts. It's a good time. There's so much laughing. Everyone's just in it for Scott Fishbowl and Fantasy Cares and raising money there. So check out the entire Podathon, but more so check us out at our slot in the wee hours of Sunday morning. So that's coming up.
Hour,
That's
midnight
right.
Central
That's
Time.
right. We'll be doing that this weekend. Otherwise, as always, give us a rate and review. Helps others find us. Go tell your friends. Subscribe. We're on pretty much any podcast platform that's out there. If not, let us know. We can look into how we can get on there, but we are on all the major ones at least. So check us out there, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Find out my partner on Twitter at Jake Trowbridge, why Twitter is still a thing. You can find our podcast at Drinking Fantasy, and you can find me at FF Dusty Dog. And until next week, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.